Back in the 90s, you could tell a stoner by the tiny holes in their clothes. They were burns caused by hot rocks, bits of badly crumbled hash falling out of a spliff. No one talks about hot rocks anymore, because almost no one smokes hash. That's because an international war on drugs crackdown led to Britain swapping mellow hippie hash for something far stronger: skunk. And with skunk came violence and mental illness.
How you protect yourself? Well, you have to be equipped. I pull out my sword. 5 times in his face. His face was like a pineapple.
This man is a weed dealer, part of the UK's new and ultra-violent industry of gangs, pushers, slaves and smokers caught in the trade of potent super skunk.
Alright, you see, this is a canal. It might look funny, but when they get lodged into your brain, it's not. This is ninja. You say, chop chop.
There are tens of thousands of rooms just like this across the United Kingdom. And they exist because the demand for skunk is through the roof.
I've been doing this business for 3 to 4 years. I know about approximately more than 4 houses in this block that actually grows weed. One room will give you approximately let's say 5 kilos. So every single room you'll be having 20, 40 kilos in your hands, when you harvest. If you get busted, never mind, we do somewhere else.
Cannabis is a drug that has developed a somewhat confusing public image. On the one hand, it's grown and sold by people like this.
Don't scare any bad man, trust me, any bad man.
But on the other, it's still associated with people like this.
Chilling out in the lovely springtime.
Harmless, dopey stoners doing harmless, dopey stoner things. The sort of people who just want to be left alone to live a chill life, give human names to their bongs, and juggle at the police. The truth is that many of the old stereotypes about cannabis and its users, like their unquestioning faith in peace, love, reggae, and hemp, are slipping away. And that's because the type of cannabis people smoke is changing. In the UK, that shift has been seismic. The proof is in this highly sophisticated graph. In 2005, just under half of the cannabis seized by UK police was hash, but in the space of just 3 years, that figure had plummeted to 14%. By 2016, it had fallen again to a meager 6%. As the hash market collapsed, skunk seizures skyrocketed, from 51% in 2005 to 85% in 2008, climbing again to 94% in 2016. The trend is clear. Skunk goes up, hash comes down. This declining love for hash has its origins in the 1990s Dutch drug scene. Over the course of that decade, many key figures in hash trafficking were killed or put in prison, including this guy, Klaas Brunsma. Based in Amsterdam, Brunsma built the largest narcotics empire ever seen in modern Europe before he was shot dead by an ex-cop in 1991. And then, 10 years later, this happened. In the wake of 9/11, the war on terror was launched in retaliation, and it quickly became clear that jihadists had been funding their attacks by selling hash, which, as you can imagine, was bad news for hash. At the time, Morocco was the planet's biggest producer of the stuff, but under heavy international pressure, Morocco's authorities targeted the cannabis farmers and traffickers of the Rift Valley, and a weed crop 1/3 the size of Los Angeles was destroyed. A subsequent drop-off in export to the Netherlands meant a drought for the nation serviced by Dutch drug gangs, including the UK. By the time the towers fell though, the ingenious Dutch had already found a way to make themselves less reliant on cannabis brought in from abroad. From the mid-90s onwards, expert seed breeders had been filling the nation's coffee shops with new super smooth, super potent strains of weed. One of these was called skunk, and it was arriving in a big way. The Dutch even coined a name for this phenomenon: the green avalanche. Potheads abandoned hash in their droves for the ultra-strong weed that the Dutch gangs were growing themselves, in special tinfoil labs that looked like spaceships, with rows of chemical-fed cannabis plants rigged up to irrigation systems, blooming in double speed beneath red-hot lights that mimic the sun. But the room you're gawping at right now doesn't belong to some Rotterdam drugs kingpin with an alias like the Reverend or Calvin Slashman. It belongs, in fact, to a British grandmother.
We're crouching in the middle of a jungle right now. How many plants have you got here?
There's about 16 in here at the minute.
Yeah. So how many of these rooms do you have?
Me personally right now, about 6.
6 of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're running almost a small empire.
Well,
You're being modest.
if you like to call it that.
And how strong is this? Is this skunk?
This is skunk. You can get different levels from high grade, cheese, blue. There's different names for it.
Yeah.
But,
It sounds like you enjoy it.
I do actually. I know I do.
Elderly female cannabis growers like this are now so common in parts of the UK that they've got their own nickname. On the streets, they're known as groppers, or granny croppers. Their existence is a sign that over the last 25 years, Dutch weed growing know-how has spread so far and wide that labs can pop up anywhere, even in the spare bedroom of a nan from Birmingham.
Are more and more gangs using groppers to grow weed?
More groppers than males.
More groppers than men?
Groppers don't get caught. Groppers don't go to prison. They're like
Do you answer to anyone, or are you?
No, I don't answer to anybody at all. I just grow it, dry it, sell it on.
How much is this all worth?
Grand piece, quick turnover.
So 16 grand?
Yeah, every 12 weeks. Oh, I need to come out this week because the fumes are low. He's just, woo!
Police estimate there are thousands of domestic grow houses all over the UK, often violently defended by all sorts of people.
Have you managed to basically bypass all of the criminal gangs?
I don't have to worry about criminal gangs. I've got gang members in every corner of my family.
Okay.
So I don't have to worry. They've got my back. I don't use them.
Right.
But I know they're there.
Yeah.
If I was to want to use them.
There weren't always this many civilian weed grows hidden away on the suburban streets and high-rise estates of the UK. When skunk first arrived in Britain, only a select few knew how to cultivate it. Chief among them were Vietnamese gangs, who showed up in the early years of the new millennium. They came to exploit the post-9/11 hash shortage and quickly seized control of the UK cannabis market. The Vietnamese operated a multitude of skunk grow houses, hiding in plain sight amid busy transient neighbourhoods. They had links to Chinese slave factories, British sex rings, and international human trafficking networks. And with a mixture of skill, cruelty, and violence, they were quickly raking in millions. It was through them that skunk first seduced British stoners en masse. And once it was in widespread use, there were more nasty surprises on the way.
When did you start smoking?
About 14. Literally fucked me up from young, sent me mad.
When did you realise that, wow, this shit's strong?
When I went to the psychiatrist and I says, look, I don't think it's normal that I'm not sleeping. So that's just like one example, like how mad can go mad, you get me? Paranoid, fucking all that shit. Because I'd walk down the road and feel like I have to walk like close to a bottle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in case a car pulled up, and I'd be in my boxers with my samurai sword on top of the roof and thing, you know what I mean? Looking like, yo, you get me? I've nearly died like 5 times, some raw shit, like one eye and all that fuckers, you get me? Here you go, lads. Yeah. Little one eye for you, you know what I mean? Stay in school, you bastards!
Have you ever heard of a term, psychosis?
Yeah, the doctor sat there when I was about 16, 17 and says I had it.
As taste changed, the UK saw the rise of a new generation of smokers raised on THC-heavy weed way more potent than hash. The number of teenagers and young adults reporting mental health problems continues to grow, and skunk continues to get much of the blame. But is that fair? Let's ask Professor David Nutt.
Well, for the last 30 years, there's been a huge debate about the role of cannabis in causing psychosis in particular. And recent analysis has shown that it's not cannabis per se, but it's the high potency stuff we call skunk. Skunk is grown under conditions which maximize the THC potency. And when the plant is producing such high levels of THC, it really struggles to produce any of the protective element called cannabidiol or CBD. So in people with schizophrenia, skunk is associated with an increased severity of the symptoms, particularly the hallucinations, the voices.
By now, skunk is truly entrenched in British society. These days, it's not Vietnamese growers who run the industry, but gangs from the UK and Albania, who are getting so rich selling heavy artillery cannabis, they've started branching out. You know that cocaine epidemic you've been hearing about? One of the reasons there's so much coke floating around is because gangs that got rich selling skunk started investing in harder drugs. Though the bosses have changed, many of those tending the crops are still foreign slaves, trafficked across the world into the UK to work in grow houses. They're known by the authorities as ghosts because they drift unnoticed through British society. They're barely there. Their presence doesn't register. Today, the same can't be said for skunk, an import whose pungent aroma has almost completely replaced the scent and presence of hash on the streets of any major town or city in the UK.
We'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs.